Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
August 7, 2020, the large bags of cash edition. And we begin with that story as told by our good friend Matt Kelly over at Radical Compliance, a WAC-O tale of FCPA misconduct. It involves a company called World Acceptance Company, a consumer loan-based business in South Carolina. It had a Mexican subsidiary that loaned money to Mexican government employees, and it somehow secured contracts to have the loan repayments deducted directly from the employee's salary and into the World Acceptance Company bank account. Of course, to do so, it paid bribes. It paid bribes of, unfortunately, an amount that is the unknown because the bookkeeping was so abysmal at the World Acceptance Corporation. About all the SEC could say is that literally large bags of cash were used to facilitate the bribe payments. It was a total amount of $4.1 million. The company paid a total fine and penalty of $21.7 million, including $17.8 million in disgorgement, $1.9 million in interest, and $2 million in penalties. The story was one of the most outstanding FCPA stories in recent memory. So check out Matt's article. Next up, the White House says it's going to crack down on Chinese-listed or U.S.-listed Chinese companies. This has been a huge bane for the U.S. capital markets because Chinese companies, frankly, refuse to comply with audit requirements. And so Chinese companies whose shares are traded on U.S. stock exchanges would be forced under this Trump administration rule to give up their listings unless they comply with these requirements. This has been long overdue, and I can certainly attest this is a huge problem with Chinese companies that through reverse mergers by U.S. companies. It's a great first step to try to rectify this problem. The TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, has completely backtracked after Trump interceded to fire the chairman, or rather the chief executive and acting board chairman, after the company, in one of the most inane moves ever, was going to outsource 20% of their workforce to India to do IT work. You would think that U.S. companies in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis would be sensitive about keeping jobs for U.S. citizens, but apparently TVA said, no, we're just going to fire you all and outsource the work. So fortunately for the TVA workers, Trump interceded, and now they've hired back a portion of those workers. Some of the workers had been able to secure other employment. Next up, the New York Attorney General has sued the NRA and seeks its closure. New York Attorney General Letitia James has alleged that years of corruption by the NRA have undermined its ability to operate as a nonprofit under the laws of New York. From the information that we've seen come out over the past 12 to 18 months, the NRA is certainly one of the most corrupt organizations masquerading as a nonprofit corporation. The looting of NRA funds by the top management to engage in what can only be called a lavish lifestyle, as demonstrated by the 3 or 4 year, $13.1 million charge for the NRA's travel consultant for its president. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, particularly in this election year going forward. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.